Hello and welcome again to, believe it or not, this is episode 4, where I pit 6 particular news items that may be of a woke flavour, woke-ish flavour, to my friend Esther here, and of course to you. And the game is to try and decide which one is the false one and which 5 are true. So far, episode 4, Esther hasn't got a single one right yet, have you?
He's reveling in this. I think when I do get one right, I deserve a present.
A present?
I want a present.
Present is maybe we continue doing the show next week.
No, I want a present. And it can't be like something like from Card Factory. It has to be like, like a $5,000 bag from Harrods.
Okay.
I think that's reasonable.
Well, we'll see if the production budget runs to that. Or if you're a mad millionaire lunatic that's got nothing better to do than give us some money to sponsor this show, then by all means,
Go ahead.
Let us know.
We take donations.
But just so you're aware, the first $5,000 will go in a handbag. Okay, should we start?
Yes.
Should we kick off? All right. So this week we're talking about the following 6 things: M&Ms. By the Mars company.
Yeah.
So they have now little characters. So you've got all the different M&Ms, peanut, chocolate, and then they're different colours.
Yeah.
And each one has got a character. So if you go to the M&M store in Leicester Square in London,
That massive one,
yeah, you see some of them got hats, some of them have got different
No.
forms of
No,
attire.
don't tell me.
Good marketing, good branding. But
Do
one
not
of
tell me what I think
them
I'm gonna hear.
wears high heels.
Okay.
Or rather, now they don't, because the high heels have been banned. So that particular M&M now, according to Mars, should not any longer wear high heels.
Why?
Because it's seen as too gratuitously gender definitive, if you like. They're my words, not theirs. So what they're doing now is to recast that character, to redraw that character with trainers on.
It's a sweet.
So it's an equilibrium, so that we don't have man versus woman, perish the thought, so that everybody is kind of personified as a gender neutral persona.
It's a sweet.
So you don't
Who read into... No, I want to... No, this is actually going to wind me up. Who read into this? Who sat there idly with clearly too much time on their hands to think, actually, this sweet with heels on...
is offending people.
Who is it offending?
Well, it's offending, well, it's probably not, but it's yet another example of a company knee-jerk reacting oversensitively to the fact that they think that something might be overtly offensive. So they have 27 board meetings and brainstorms and then spend probably $25 million on changing something that, so of course, you and I agree is not necessary to change. But yet another example. We talked on a previous episode about Minnie Mouse and her pantsuit, right?
Yeah.
This is another example of ridiculous claptrap, overly defensive, overly sensitive, apologist rubbish, just in case someone's offensive and says, well, that looks a bit slutty, well, that looks a bit too much like a woman, and therefore it's being demeaning towards women, because not all women wear high heels,
I mean, well, men, there are men that wear high heels, drag queens and all of that. I just think what is happening here is they're so bent on erasing the link between sex and gender that they say, oh yeah, we know sex exists, but gender is fluid and everyone has a different, identifies differently, so we shouldn't have any sort of link between sex and gender, like the female character wearing high heels, which is never going to happen because sex and gender are inherently linked. In some countries, in some languages, they're actually the same thing.
So you don't think? Let me just be devil's advocate for a sec. This is not my view, right? But if I was the CEO of Mars, or maybe they've got a head woke officer, they've got a chief woke officer, a CWO,
diversity officer.
Yeah, they've got a CEO, a CFO, a CMO, and a CTO, and they've also got a CWO, chief woke officer. I would imagine, right? So do they genuinely think that parents are thinking, if I give M&Ms and one of the characters in the M&M bag as such has got high heels, that means that my daughter might think that all women have to wear high heels, and therefore she feels forced in some way to dress in that way as a woman, rather than having her own mind and deciding to dress less elegantly, shall we say. That must be what goes through their heads.
If you have a child that thinks that your child is thick, I'm sorry, the child is stupid. How does your child draw the connection between a sweet wearing heels at a massive shop in Leicester Square to
and a social issue? Well, actually, surely as parents, what we should be teaching kids is that they should form their own opinions and they should be able to make their own choices in life, right?
I mean, yeah, if you have a kid that thinks that way, very, very worried.
Yeah, but it's not the kid, it's the parents presupposing for the kid, right? So actually what you're doing is stunting that kid's emotional growth by not exposing them to the realities that some women want to wear high heels. What's wrong with that?
Why can't we just eat M&Ms? Why do we have to do all of this?
I know. Number 2.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to go any further?
I'll make it.
Okay. University of Northampton. I love a university.
Because it's
deep
always
dive.
almost true.
Yeah, because look, we talked in the past about, alarms around necks and safe spaces.
Rape
and so on.
alarms and all of that, yeah.
So University of Northampton has issued warnings to readers of 1984, the novel by George Orwell. Now, obviously, George Orwell's 1984 was written whenever it was, back in the 50s.
Yeah.
And it's a cautionary tale, isn't it? You've read it, I think. I haven't read it.
I found it very traumatizing, but I read it when I was 16, and I thought I was reading a romance novel about a couple back in.
Well, that's a kind of tiny part of it, isn't it? But this is about what can happen to society in terms of authoritarianism and oppression and so on.
I think it should have a trigger warning that this has no affiliation with anything romantic or Mills and Boon associated, because that's all I read.
So
as a
you
teenager.
thought at first it was about a couple that met in 1984 and went off into the sunset holding
and I was
hands.
reading it, I was just like, oh, Winston. And I'm like,
no, that's not really what it's about. But now, if you're a student of the University of Northampton, and bear in mind, this might be true, I might be making it up, and you start reading that book as part of the curriculum, there's a huge warning which is apparently given to that student and is kind of orally articulated by the lecturer, that you might be offended, that the book includes violence, it includes issues around gender, shock horror, it includes issues around sexuality, class, sex abuse, and strong language. And actually, what
Isn't that the point of the book?
Well, that's like life, because in life there is violence, there is sex, there is gender, there is stuff that goes on, right? So rather than being compartmentalized and sanitized and wrapped in cotton wool, pretending that this stuff doesn't exist, this is effectively protecting 19 and 20-year-old students from that.
I may say something that will horrify you. I'm not entirely horrified by that. I do think it should come, not with a trigger warning, but just know that you're not reading a romance novel. I think it should come with some warning.
So what, like the Disney film Bambi should have a warning saying you might be a bit upset when the mum dies?
No, but no one's traumatized by that.
Spoiler alert, the mum dies.
I just think, I'm not horrified by it. Obviously, I don't think it needs it, because you're a university student. You should be able to interact and engage with different ideas comfortably. But I do understand it as someone who wasn't reading a Mills and Boon type novel.
I know. Well, I'm sorry about the disappointment now where 1984 is concerned, that you realise that it's not about a romantic liaison. Should we move on to number 3? Yeah. Well, actually, sorry, just going back to number 2 here, 1984. Do we think actually, if you're offended as a student, do you think it gives you the right then not to read the book? And I guess then is the natural extension of this rubbish that then, because you haven't read the book as part of the syllabus, if you can't answer questions as part of your degree course, you should be let off the hook.
No, I actually had this situation when I was at
because that would be properly ridiculous, right?
No, I know, but I actually had that situation because I went to Bristol University, so a brilliant university, but full of woke weirdos. And I had a situation
they throw statues in water.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I was in the politics and the French.
You were
department.
probably
So
in the water trying to push it back up.
I was like, no, I lived outside that statue. Anyway, but I was in the.
And you weren't offended by it as a black woman.
I took pictures of it. I was like, Daddy, look. Anyway.
And he wasn't offended by it.
He was like, who's that? But anyway, I had students, like course mates, that refused to read a particular required reading for 1 week's seminar. And they're like, we find this offensive, this is really rude. And they tried to sue the university.
And what was it, something that was written 75 years ago or something?
In the early 2000s. And I was just like, and they were like, don't you see this? And they thought me, it's like, as you as a black woman, I was like, listen, I don't care. Listen, I'm hungry. I want to go home. You're not feeding me. I have no vested interest in this. And they're like, but surely you understand where we're coming from. And I was like, get over it. You're not made of sugar. You're not going to melt.
So we should be able to pick our way through history and literature, just and navigate through anything.
No, I think
and away from anything that might be offended.
If you're a uni student, I'm sorry. If you're going about your normal business and someone chucks that at you and says, or like your boss says you have to read it, I get it, right? Because it's not part of your job description. You're a uni student. You're meant to be there to engage with certain ideas. You can't say that I'm not going to read this. Like, it's not designed to make you happy.
Yeah, but otherwise we'll have to airbrush out World War I and World War II and the Russian Revolution from the history syllabus, because they are inherently
bloody and violent.
Yeah, people died, right? They were horrific, horrible things. The Holocaust, a horrendous thing that should never be repeated. But do we, because they're offensive and they might upset, disappoint and scare people, not teach those things? I mean, it's ludicrous. Right, look, number 3. We'll kind of calm down a little bit now. This is maybe, I hope, slightly less
Yeah, I
We'll
mean
see.
that's not the worst one.
But this is bin men, so people that empty our bins. And thank you, by the way, for your service. If you are in Retford in Nottinghamshire and you leave your bin lid slightly open because you've stuffed it full of a few too many bags, and so you know how people can leave the bin lids kind of slightly open like that because there's too many bags in. The bin men in Retford, Nottingham now will not now empty your bin because it's overflowing. And do you know why?
Why?
It's because in the wind, as the bin man goes up to the bin and it's half open already, the wind might catch the lid and bang into the bin man and hurt them. You look horrified.
I'm confused.
So the
Surely
health
that's
and
just an
safety.
occupational hazard.
So the health and safety nutters at this particular council have said, do not empty bins where the lid is not securely
What if you put a brick
closed.
on it?
Well, I think it'd be even worse. What if it's a big gust and the brick went in your head?
But that's the point. It's not going to happen because
Well,
it's
it's
a brick.
not going to happen. None of this is going to happen, right? And again, where does this go, right? What next? Do they not pick up bins because they might hurt their backs?
You see, this is the thing. Whenever there's an argument that councils are useless or overbloated or they don't do their jobs properly, these things don't help.
No, they don't. No, they don't. And it doesn't really help empathy or sympathy where the residents, the public, are concerned.
Look, I understand that being a
I
bin
don't
man
think there'll
isn't
be
very
many members of
glamorous.
the public in Retford actually support this, do they?
Yeah, but I just don't think. How do you have time to sit down and think about this? That's very weird.
I'm afraid that the public sector councils have all the time in the world to think about these things. And then they go
I'm sure they've had complaints.
Yeah, and then what they do, they put a nice health and safety argument in a 97-page document to councillors or senior civil servants, and they get this rubbish through on the basis of, well, we might be sued. Bin lid might hit someone and they might be sued. All right, okay, but it might not be true. I might have just made that up. It's so ridiculous, isn't it?
I know.
Might be true.
This
might
is
not
only
be
number
true.
3 as well. Jesus.
Yeah, okay. Hasbro, the toy company. Mr. Potato Head?
Yeah.
You know Mr. Potato Head?
Yeah,
In Toy
Steve
Story?
Harvey.
Yeah, not anymore, it's not. It's now no longer Mr. Potato Head.
What is it?
We're not allowed to call
The
it Mr.
potato
Potato.
person.
It's now Potato Head. Because Mr's offensive. Because why is it Mr? I mean, there is a Mrs. Potato
it has a
Head.
moustache.
So there's now Potato Head and Potato Head.
Surely it has a moustache.
But you can't genderize toys, right? Because so what you're basically saying is, as a boy, you will want to play with Mr. Potato Head, but what if you're a girl?
This argument that children are
annoying you?
socialized.
Is this
It's
annoying
it's really winding me up because I keep hearing this argument that children are socialized to socialize to play with certain toys. So girls are socialized to want to play with Barbies, and boys are socialized to want to play with monster trucks and all of that. If you take a 7-month, because they've done this experiment on 7-month babies that are literally genderless widgets, right? You cannot tell the difference between a boy baby and a girl baby. They eat, sleep, and poop. And you can see them the girls lean towards the Barbie and all of that. And the guys,
So you think it's inherent in their DNA almost?
No, but humans are naturally
It's like how my dog
predisposed
knows
to
how
like
to
what we
run
like.
after a stick, but I didn't run after a
Well,
stick
yeah.
and catch it in my mouth
I
to
think
show
it's
you.
like an evolutionary
You just
thing.
kind of
That's
knew,
very
but that's what you're saying with gender.
No, but it's true. But the thing is, you can even see this when you let people choose what they want to choose. I always see arguments like, why aren't girls trying to be engineers or whatever? But I'm like, you never complain when the vast majority of social science graduates from universities are women. That's not a problem. But if you don't have enough women in STEM subjects, that's an issue. And it's like, when they're not being pushed one way. I don't think there's not enough evidence to suggest that makes up the overwhelming reason why women are not pursuing certain things or playing with certain toys.
But men and women should be able to do whatever they want to do, but they shouldn't be at any point prevented, but they shouldn't also be coerced into not doing what they believe as an individual comes naturally, just because it might be seen to be politically incorrect.
This is the thing. I feel like the end goal is more important than actually what's happening in the interim. They want to see a 50-50 world in some sectors. So they want to see a 50-50 split at like the high levels of corporate banking or whatever, but not necessarily with bin cleaning or bricklayers. No one is sort of advocating for there to be more female bricklayers because they don't care about that. They want the more luxurious, sexy, glossy kind of forms of employment. And I just said that's not realistic. And it's probably not going to happen because people have different priorities. Unfortunately for men, or fortunately, they cannot carry children. Sometimes as you go through life, your priorities change based on what you can actually physically do.
The snowflake agenda seems to be that there are certain people offended by gender. I mean, that's ridiculous.
No, I think the bigger issue, they're just trying to unlink it from sex. And it's just not going to work. Sorry.
All right, so that's number 4. True or false? We'll see.
hope
Number
it's
5, the Churchill War Rooms.
Okay.
Kind of bastion of patriotism.
Yeah.
Churchill, who obviously was our wartime prime minister, Churchill apparently is a controversial figure. You know, they've had to protect his statue in
Yeah,
Parliament
from being
Square several
chucked,
times. So they're changing the name.
To what?
Now it's going to be the World War Rooms. Because Churchill himself, because apparently he was a bit of a racist, and actually I'm not even sure that's in dispute. I think there's definitely evidence
who
that he
wasn't
was.
back then?
Well, we're talking about the 1930s, 1940s. Wrong still, however, but that was then. We're talking about 80 years ago, and he's a bit of a misogynist, I suspect, as well.
Yeah,
so because that may or may not be true, the powers that be have said, okay, well, to save offending people that now see this as a Churchill thing, so it's a bit like the statue debate that we just had, Colston and so on, they changed the name, the World War Rooms instead of the Churchill War Rooms. How do you feel about that?
The thing is, I feel like if you're going to be that ridiculous, which it is, it's ridiculous, be consistent about it, right? We always talk about how amazing Nelson Mandela was, for instance, and he was an amazing stoic character, and he was incredibly revolutionary. But there are loads of people that says he was a terrorist because he actually did.
Well, he did blow things up and kill people.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll never see that side of the coin. And I'm someone I take a deep interest in sort of South African history.
But no one's ripped his statue down.
Exactly. But we're doing that for Winston Churchill, who obviously came with flaws, right?
And someone that was prominent 80 years ago.
When you take those arguments back and they say, oh, this person was linked to slavery, people often choose to forget about the other parts of slavery. Like, for instance, Ghana had the largest, at the height of the transatlantic slave trade, we had the largest port for transporting slaves. There were actual Ghanaians and Africans that benefited from the slave trade.
Well, slavery started in Africa, the Africans enslaving Africans, right?
There are black Africans right now enslaved in the parts of the Middle East and North Africa. Arabs benefited hugely from even before the transatlantic slave trade. We always look at the part of history where it's easy to vilify people, but you're never going to go to an Indian or a Ghanaian or whatever and say, actually, your ancestors benefited from slavery, so you should be banned from this. Yeah. They will tell you where to shove it.
All right, well, look, you can tell me where to shove it in a minute with regard to whether the Churchill War Rooms really are changing
I just think that's
name
unnecessary.
Or not, we shall see. Right, number 6, last one. Very recently, lots and lots of controversy and debate around the Priti Patel policy, obviously, which Boris Johnson's announced around Rwanda. And in effect, if anyone's missed this, well, you've obviously had your head up your arse, frankly. But what's going to happen as an asylum seeker that ends up on these shores, you will end up going to Rwanda to be processed, and that will take a long period of time. And obviously, there's been an uproar about it. Well, apparently, the uproar has been joined by the airlines. So, of course, if Priti Patel gets away, if this starts to happen, the only way she's going to get the refugees and asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda is to fly them.
It's like when you normally deport people. Actually, I think I've heard of this. Yeah, so they're considering...
Or have you? Maybe I made it up.
No, I
so the airlines that would normally be filled up with the refugees themselves being taken to Rwanda are refusing to do so.
I think,
because they don't want to get caught up in such a controversial thing. So now Priti Patel has said, or has she, well, don't worry, we're now going to have to use private jets. So we're now, because of the airlines' abdication of responsibility, or even commercial responsibility, because they're going to be paid, right? We're now, as taxpayers, going to have to spend our own money jetting asylum seekers and refugees in private jets from Britain to Rwanda.
Why do they not consider shipment?
Well, as in...
Like, ship them. Why does it have to be a ship? Yeah, a ship. Put them on a ship. Am I crazy?
No, maybe, I don't know.
Put them on the ship.
Takes too long,
Cross the Suez Canal, go past Kenya, a little bit further south. Yeah, it's landlocked, so you probably have to, walk or ride or whatever.
On like a really rubbish old cruise ship or something, you mean?
Like, genuinely.
I don't know. No idea. But this is what's going to happen. So
I'm not horrified by that, just for the practicality of it. Did no one consider shipping?
No, but don't forget, a lot of this is a publicity stunt by the government, right? We know that. So there's probably only going to be, in my opinion, there's only going to be a handful of refugees that end up actually going to Rwanda. This is all about deterrent. This is all about being able to stand up as the government and say, if you as a refugee or an asylum seeker come here, this is what's going to happen to you, and therefore it puts you off. So
Rwanda, though?
But you know what they've got to do? Well, because it's far enough away and it's deemed to be perhaps less palatable as a destination than the UK. That's the whole point.
So funny. I thought, when I heard, I'm probably going to get in trouble with this. When I heard the Rwanda plans, my first initial reaction was to laugh. Because I was like, that is so random. It's like saying we're going to send you to Tonga.
Rwanda are also going to benefit commercially from this. So that's another reason why it's Rwanda. Absolutely. And also, apparently, the Danish, who have started to do this previously, also considered Rwanda. So I think there's four.
There's a precedent. I just think it's so funny. That's like saying you're going to send someone to like Colombia. Well, Colombia might actually.
Well, it's like saying, I want to go to the West End, and they say, oh no, I'm sorry, we've got to bus you to Coventry. I'm ever so sorry. It's kind of the same
You
thing.
are-
There's a cinema.
You are a hell.
There's a cinema and a pub. It'll be fine. You'll love it.
Do you
You'll love
remember? Do you remember that story when I went to what is that Winter Wonderland?
Yeah.
I went on a date to Winter Wonderland.
The most expensive cold day out ever.
He took me to the Winter Wonderland in Clapham. And
Who did? Your boyfriend?
No, the date. I never saw him again. And I had a face like a slapped ass because I got really dressed up and I'd never been to the Winter Wonderland that I expected to be in Hyde Park. And I get there, it's like literally if Poundland had a version of.
And you didn't see him again. Not surprising. Right, should we recap?
He called me a princess.
A princess.
Because I was so pissed. And I was like, literally, there are pigeons pecking at my feet. This is such a crap area that there are pigeons bold enough to peck at my shoes.
Yeah, so let that be a lesson to anybody that's sitting here watching this thinking about taking Esther out.
No, don't take me to Winter
Don't
Wonderland.
take her to some crap
the
frozen
B-Tech
dodgems in South
version.
London. Right.
Oh my God.
Number one, let's recap,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
So M&M characters are going to have their high heels removed.
Okay.
University of Northampton has issued warnings about reading the novel 1984 by George Orwell, just in case you're offended by it, because it's got all sorts of stuff in it. Retford Council, Nottinghamshire, they have said that bin men don't now have to empty bins with bin lids that are not fully closed. Hasbro, the toy company, they have turned Mr. Potato Head into simply Potato Head for fear of it being offensive from a gender perspective. Churchill, persona non gratis. Churchill now is, the Churchill War Rooms are now going to give way to being called the World War Rooms instead, just in case you're offended by the word Churchill, even though he was our second greatest Prime Minister, actually, after Margaret Thatcher.
Oh my God, we have to disagree there.
Let's not go there. And then lastly, the airlines, whoever they are, a lot of them apparently, that are refusing to take refugees and asylum seekers from Britain to Rwanda. So which one of those do you think is definitely true, Esther?
Yeah, the Rwanda one I think is true because I know I've heard of that.
So the airlines one. Okay, I'll give you that. That is true.
That is true.
Okay. What else do you think is true?
Probably the War Rooms one with Churchill.
Okay.
The one I think is false is probably the Eminem's one.
M&M ones, right. So the M&M ones, so this is taking the high heels off the character and ensuring that they wear trainers so as not to be gender offensive. That's actually true. That's Mars in Slough. M&M's, they have deigned to change the character through fear of it being offensive.
I'm sure.
And too girly. University of Northampton. George Orwell, offensive, poor for snowflake
Probably
students.
true.
Don't read it
because
just in case you feel, a bit disappointed.
as someone who's been to university, this kind of crap I can expect.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
Bin lids in Retford, Nottingham.
Oh, that has to be false. Come on.
That's true.
What?
Seriously. Bin men. So you think bin men, and women, of course, you can be a bin woman.
I have never seen one.
You would think that they'd be quite robust, wouldn't you? But no, apparently they're scared of lids flying open and hurting them. Mr. Potato Head.
Is that the false one?
No, it's true as well.
So what's the false
Got
one?
it wrong again, Esther Kraku.
Okay, fine.
I
Hit me with
made
it.
up the Churchill War Rooms.
But that's so believable because they tried to pull down a statue.
Yeah,
no,
I
that's
know.
not fair.
So the Churchill War Rooms, thank God,
Yeah.
are still going to continue to be the Churchill War Rooms, right? Long may that continue forever, ever, ever.
I will get my £5,000 bag.
Everything else, maybe not. Everything else was true.
I think that was the first one I said was true as well.
So isn't this fun? So we're
it's
four
not fun
episodes
because
in.
I keep losing.
4 episodes in, and Esther Craig, who has not managed to yet guess which one is false. We're good at this. Sorry, I'm good at this.
No, I don't like it.
You need to gen up a little
I
bit.
should be able to call someone to ask for help. Like phone a friend.
Okay, who'd you ring?
Winston Churchill.
If you could. If you could. Yeah, maybe we should allow you that. Yeah, maybe we should
phone a
allow
friend.
you a 50-50 and a phone a friend.
But the thing is, none of my friends would pick up. They're just like, Mitch, what do you want?
We'll talk to the producers here to see if we might be able to do that. So good. Okay, right. Well, that wraps
Yes.
up episode 4. Episode 5 soon. So look, do comment, do
Yes.
like, and subscribe, I guess.
Obviously, don't be rude. Don't leave without subscribing. And leave nice comments. Nice ones.
Yeah, about me, but you can say what you like about her. Until next time.
I'm not going to dignify that with a response.
Bye.